Become a sustaining member of the Commonwealth Club for just $10 a month.
Want to welcome those that are in person here today, but also our virtual friends. Thank you for joining us today. I actually wanted to start off. Who are Warriors fans here today? Oh, there you go. Got Warriors fans. Hopefully some online too. Hopefully everyone takes the energy from Game 7 yesterday, brings it here today, because we are celebrating the first day of AAPI Heritage Month. Today is May 1st. So welcome here, everyone. I have my lucky Steph Curry socks. I will be wearing Steph Curry socks every day this week just to cheer on the Warriors. So happy to share the energy. But we have a great lineup today. We have Michelle Miao, Kathy Fang, and Michelle Mi Jung Kim. They're going to be talking a little bit about seizing opportunities. And seizing opportunities to ascend is really a broad topic, but it's really about taking that energy. It's not just about May Heritage Month, but it's about taking those risks, breaking down those barriers, and making sure that we have better representation. I want to explain a little bit about Ascend NorCal. We are the largest Pan-Asian nonprofit membership organization in North America. We have 20 professional chapters and 40 plus student chapters. So that means that we are a full career life cycle organization. We start at the students' universities, so we have UC Davis, UC Berkeley, Golden Gate University, and San Francisco State. Those are our student chapters. We have early career, mid-career, management, executive, all the way to board readiness. So we are a full career life cycle organization. But we also give back to the community. We have Ascend Cares. We just did an event with JP Morgan Chase on Friday. We gave back to the community by teaching students, 6th and 7th graders, a little bit about leadership, but we also taught them about financial wellness, how to save. So we started at an early age. And we actually went to a private Catholic school in the Tenderloin. They are the only middle school in the Tenderloin, and it was great to see the kids engaged. But don't want to take up too much time. I do want to hand it over to Michelle. Great topic today, seizing opportunities to ascend, and welcome. Reach out to some of our board members here today. We have Wynn, we have Jordan, Priscilla, answer any questions about Ascend NorCal, and then look us up on our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Continue the conversation. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly humbled, and it feels so special that we're all here today on the 1st of May. And I woke up today and thought about how lucky I am to be able to hold space in this way, but also to be sharing a stage with these two inspirational folks in which we will get to know in just a little bit. Just some housekeeping items. First, if this is your first time to the Commonwealth Club is a 120-year-old institution started in 1903 in which thought leaders come together for civic dialogue. And my contributions to the programs that I put together focus on social justice issues with an intersectional approach. And I also am a member of the Board of Governors for the Commonwealth Club. We will have a special reception after the program, so stick around, hang out. It's going to be on the 3rd floor, so the easiest way to get there is the elevators and hit the button to the 3rd floor. We'll have some snacks and some, yes, alcoholic beverages. But for those who do not imbibe, we do have sodas and such. And we'll also be doing book signings. So if you didn't get your book on your way in, you can still do that on your way out. We have both authors' books here, Kathy's and Michelle's. If you brought your own, A+. A+. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our speakers today, which they really don't need an introduction. Both icons in our community, but especially here in the Bay Area. Kathy Fang, born and raised in San Francisco, where she grew up in a kitchen, but a very special kitchen. And I'm pretty sure some of you who are here in the Bay Area have dined there, House of Nanking, before she opened up her own restaurant with her father, Fang Restaurant, in 2009. She stars in the Food Network series Chef Dynasty, House of Fang. She also appeared on Beat Bobby Flay, in which I haven't seen that episode. I don't know if you're a contestant or not, and I hope that you did beat Bobby Flay. I always wish that people beat Bobby Flay when I watch the show. And during COVID, she's released a cookbook, Easy Asian Cookbook, so you know that it is filled with tons and tons of good food. You probably sitting there at home making a whole lot of good food, I imagine. Yeah.
At the restaurant.
At the restaurant. And we also have Michelle Mi-jung Kim, who's a queer Korean American immigrant woman, writer, speaker, and activist. She is an award-winning author of The Wake Up, Closing the Gap Between Good Intentions and Real Change, and also co-founder of Awaken. She has been a lifelong social justice activist and currently serves on the board of Asian Americans for Civil Rights and Equality. Let's welcome our speakers to the program tonight. I was imagining, Kathy, you're in the kitchen and growing up, and so I thought about this. I had heard Michelle's story about, growing up, especially as immigrant, but it's just so special for us as AAPI folks. And when we think about growing up, our culture, our family, and so much of this is an influence or shapes, who we become. And so both of you and experiencing the success that you're experiencing today, share with us how, however you grew up, how that shaped your experiences today. We'll start with Kathy.
I feel like my experience may be unique and maybe not, especially to a lot of Asian immigrants or first gen. Growing up in a Chinese restaurant can be quite common for people like myself. And it's highly actually impacted the way that I've approached business and even the person that I am now. Growing up in the restaurant industry, I learned how hard it was for my parents, all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And because of it, it's made me a fighter, right? Like the number one goal for me is to make my parents proud of me. And that's also a very Asian, like stereotypical type of upbringing. Like, don't disappoint your elders, make us proud. Look at everything that we've created for you. You need to grow something even bigger. And that's actually really, I think, like the compass that I've used in guiding myself through challenges and becoming the successful business person that I've become, is that I always look at my elders, I look at my parents, and like, if they can do it, I can do it. It's also this never-ending cycle, which is kind of interesting because my goal was to make my parents very happy and proud of me. But when I was younger, nobody ever told you that Asian parents will never tell you that they're happy for you. It's just like pretty uncommon for them to be like, give you praise. But it actually luckily worked in my favor because it's provided me a lot of grit. In that sense, it's been amazing. And obviously the other part that you're going to see is it fostered my passion for food, and that's why I've become the chef that I am and have, continued this legacy that my parents have built, and I want to continue to grow that in ways that hopefully they could, not possibly even imagine. But yeah, I would say growing up the restaurant, growing up with my parents, it's really the grit and hard work that I took away from that has helped me.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Hi, everybody. Hi. So good to see you. Thank you for coming out, and happy AAPI Heritage Month. I'm Michelle Mi-jung Kim. I use she, her pronouns. And, that question around how our upbringing impacted our success, I put that in air quotes because I think I had a very different idea of what success meant growing up. I immigrated to this country when I was a teenager. I was born and raised in South Korea, and I moved here when I turned 13. I grew up with a dad who was low income, who had to declare bankruptcy, and who was undocumented for over a decade. And I thought that in order for me to be able to protect my family, I needed to be, quote unquote, successful. I thought that, growing up watching how my dad and my mom, because of their broken English, how they were disrespected, how they were not protected by the systems that I expected to provide protection for my family. I thought that the only way that I win, the only way that I get to have a voice for my parents was for me to become somebody, for people to respect me because of my job, because I have money, because I can, afford a lawyer if they are ever mistreated. I think I had so much anger and desperation that fueled me to study, to get into college, to be able to get a job, to be able to make money. And I needed money to bring my mom over here from South Korea. And as many of you probably are aware, the immigration system in this country is quite expensive to navigate and arduous. So I knew early on that I needed to be able to make money in order to provide for my family who didn't have a lot of resources or the language to be able to fight back. So I think that's probably the biggest ways in which I was impacted by my upbringing. It's this rage, the anger that I needed to be somebody in order for me to be able to protect my family. And then I think I have really gone through an evolution in how I define success now. And I want to quote Maya Angelou, who said, "Success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it." And it took me a really long time for me to even get to the first part of liking myself, right? And I think about the journey of me trying to fit in so desperately as an immigrant child who came here as a teenager, who was told that I needed to adopt an English name in order to fit in better. And that journey of trying to fit into this standard of whiteness and for me to exist in that box. And the journey of me reclaiming who I am, reclaiming the parts of me that I discarded because I thought that's what that's not welcome here. That's not desirable here. And so, my book that came out with my Korean name is, part of that journey of me trying to become more successful by the definition that I'm using now, which is liking myself, liking what I do, and liking how I do it. So it's been a full circle, really, in my own definition of success and how I feel successful.
Thank you so much to both of you for that.
Thank you.
Which really, it's, again, inspiring to hear both your stories. And for me, growing up, and I think for many of you, this probably resonates with you, where your parents just say, just don't cause trouble, don't speak up, don't put yourself out there, and so forth and so on. And I see you on TV, I see you, your published works, I read your books. And in some ways, it's like not what we're supposed to be. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts in pushing, the comfort level to say, yes, I can be this person that's on TV that maybe we don't see enough of, as far as an Asian American face, or I can publish a book, even though it may be very challenging and hard. But talk to us about, pushing against those gender norms or cultural traditions in order to be who you are today.
Okay, so for me, when I opened Fang Restaurant, which was over 14 years ago, I had this dream that I wanted to be able to create a stand and stir for people, which was teach people how to cook easy Asian cuisine. And I pitched this like hundreds of times to networks. And at that time, I had so much pushback. The number one thing was, your food is too exotic. Everybody loves barbecue, burgers and tacos. Dumplings and egg rolls and all that is still not as known, or the way that I looked, the culture that I represented, it's still too new. And I knew that this was something that's going to take off at some point. And so a lot of it was about timing, and a lot of it was about putting yourself out there continually. And so there was no stand and stir, but I said, hey, there's cooking competitions. There's all these other things that I can do. And so I went out, I did Chopped, which I went and won 2 times.
Yay!
But it's like continually putting yourself out there. And that is actually quite hard because, you know, I was doing this with my father. My father is my business partner, and growing up Asian, it's all about keeping your head down, not putting yourself out there, right? Don't be noticeable. And the way that I kind of circumvented that, even though we're super close, is that I didn't actually really tell him. I just kept it under the radar and be like, oh, by the way, I'm flying out to New York. I'm going to do this competition. And I could tell my dad's like, go beat him. But he's like, okay, all right. I don't know if you should do that. You should probably be at the restaurant working. But that, you know, he's like, those things don't really matter. Stick with what, you know, what's important here. And after I won, I feel like my dad's kind of like, okay, we're on board. There's just a lot of things along the way, including the show. When you think about doing a reality show, is the complete opposite of what a Chinese family would ever want. They don't want anybody to know anything. Like, don't even come into my house, let alone do a reality show. But I knew that this was going to open up doors for me. For the last 14 years, I've been trying to put my foot in that door in terms of TV and media to share our food and our culture. And I had that door slammed on my face so many times, and I got this opportunity. I'm like, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to tell my dad. And so I'm like, Dad, Food Network's going to come and just do a show. And they're like, okay. I didn't say reality because he's going to have to research what is a reality show. He doesn't even know what that is. I'm like, and once he knows, he's not going to want to do it. So I'm like, they're just going to talk about this father-daughter business. And he like went with the whole thing. And now where we are. So like my dad's very happy with all that. It's all about putting yourself out there and taking up that challenge and finding ways to do things that are uncomfortable.
Amazing. You know, it's on my bucket list to get on Chopped one day. I don't know how to cook, but I think that's what makes it fun.
I could get you probably on there to do that.
Hey, yeah, I'd have to get some lessons first before I get on there because I don't want to embarrass our entire community.
No, not possible.
The question around defying the expectations that are put on people like you and me, or, you know, Asian women at large, Asian femmes at large. I think that's such an important conversation because I get asked all the time from organizations who want me to come in and do a training on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And some of the questions that I get from the leaders is, how can we get Asian people to speak up more? How can we get Asian people, because of the culture that we are brought in, where we have respect for the elders. So there's this assumption that Asian people are not pushing back on the requests that are coming from the leaders. They're not the ones who are in the meeting rooms, raising their voices, putting in their ideas. And I think there is a very dangerous stereotype that is rooted in the model minority myth that tells this false story that Asian people are submissive, Asians are apolitical, Asians are so respectful towards our elders that they do not speak up, when in reality, there are Asian people who are doing all of those things all the time, right? Who are pushing against the norms, who are organizing at the grassroots level, who are very much activated in the social justice spaces. So I think there is this blanket erasure of the people and invisibilizing of the stories that exist that we have to be really critical in interrogating and lifting up. And when I get the question around how, you know, why aren't Asian people speaking up more in the workplace? Sometimes there's also this refusal to acknowledge that there is penalty when people do. That when I was in corporate America and then in the tech ecosystem, I was never the quiet one. Surprise! I was often pushing back against a lot of the norms, the cultural practices and policies that I felt were inequitable. And I was always causing good trouble inside the workplace, inside school systems. And I was rarely the quiet one. But what people don't think about is when there are people who are pushing back against these stereotypes, who are defying the narratives of the minority, there is a blowback when the counter example exists, because our society wants us to remain in these boxes, right? And so I think it's important for us to, continue to push back against these narratives and recognize that this is happening at so many different levels. It's happening within ourselves, it's happening interpersonally, it's happening at an organizational level, as well as systemic levels, right? When we think about the disparity of how funding gets distributed. For example, in philanthropical organizations, less than 1% of funding goes towards organizations that are specifically geared towards and are led by AAPI folks. Less than 1% of philanthropic dollars go towards people who look like you and me. So all of these narratives contribute to systemic levels of inequity. So it's not just about individuals not doing enough to push back against the narrative, but it's how all of us in our psyche have this narrative that Asian people are supposed to be this and that. And that contributes to the erasure of a whole plethora of stories that are not being told today.
So do you think that the younger generation is more impacted by that, or also just by like the upbringing? It's like a combination of the two, of the upbringing of wanting them to be this way and societal pressure of both of those things
I think it's
together.
I think it's all of them. I think it's, I do think that there are, examples of people who are growing up with this expectation that they're not going to push back against their elders. I mean, I grew up in South Korea, and I was literally physically beaten in schools if I were disobeying any orders from the school, right, or from the teachers. So I understand that there are some cultural remnants of that. And I think what is important is when we see counter examples happening, that we lift those examples up, that we don't let our school system or our government erase categorically the historical activism that Asian people have been engaging in this country over centuries, right? Because those stories are not being told. So we have to do both at the same time. We have to, I think, challenge some of the ways that we are creating these narratives inside our communities, and at the same time work to dismantle the systemic erasure of our struggles, our history, and our very loud activism that's continuously not being told, so that we can inspire young people to be whoever they want to be. Not one thing or the other. You don't have to be always, the quiet and submissive and apolitical one. And you also don't have to be always trying to be pushing back on these narratives either, because, we all get to have our own individuality. Because sometimes, we go to the other side of, you can't be apolitical. You have to be always engaged. You have to be loud. You have to be pushing back. You have to be the loudest voice in the room to defy the stereotypes. Then that becomes an additional layer of burden that gets placed on marginalized people that are not that's not the kind of pressure that we put on people who are not marginalized, who are not underrepresented, right? So I think we need to be really careful about how we balance those things, that we give people the freedom to just exist as who they want to be, while acknowledging that there are these forces that are always at play that are trying to get us to go into one or another, direction, or be inside specific boxes or labels.
Pushing back, though, has definitely had unintended consequences for many of us in our community. And I say that, looking back at the anti-Asian racism that our communities have faced, I can't imagine the both of you putting yourself out there and speaking up in this way, what kind of feedback or responses you get from folks who disagree or just simply don't want you there. Could you share with us maybe, some of the challenges you may have faced when it's come to either anti-Asian racism and violence, or sexism, or, homophobia, body shaming, all these things that, again, contribute to wanting to put us back into those boxes?
I think for me, being in the food space and having a restaurant, we are initially subject to all sorts of thoughts and opinions, good or bad, on a daily basis. I feel like if I could put in a jar the amount of sort of racist and sexist and all kinds of commentary that we would have gotten, that we've received in the last 14 years, I would be like a billionaire. Because you've got people who are into food, who are not into food, commenting, people who've never even been to your restaurant and had your food. Everybody has an opinion and a thought, right? Like I've had people aggressively come up to me at my restaurant and be like, trying to lecture me about MSG, or trying to be like, why does Chinese food have it? It is like awful. From trying to argue with me about pricing at a Chinese restaurant, why it should be $5.99 versus $12.99, and all this stuff. There's so many different types of preconceived notions about my culture, my food, how I should look, and all those things. But those are things that I feel like I luckily sort of viewed as a sort of like someone on the bench, seeing my dad and my parents go through that. I saw them go through that for, like 30 years essentially. And maybe it's sort of that whole Asian stone face thing. My parents it just kind of slid off their back, that I sort of took upon the same way of dealing with this. And it's actually worked well for me, because I could go and argue with these people, but it's not really like, I don't feel like it's my job to go and try to educate them. I think there are other more productive ways to do it, not in the place of my business. But that's why I wanted to do like Easy Asian Cooking. That's why right now I'm like pushing for a travel log about showing people the best eats for Asian cuisine through like an Asian person's perspective, and not from some Western perspective. Like, how about exploring all the beautiful Asian cuisines across the US and opening up that conversation and bridging all the people together. I come from a place of like wanting to celebrate, and food is the number one way to connect people. It's a very neutral space. And even in that space, you get a lot of negativity, right? So the way that, I guess the thing that's always pushed me is I look at the way I'm modeling after the way that my parents have handled it. And I think to myself, I can make that change now that I'm like, I have that microphone. I can find ways to make that change. Not in the place of my business, not at that time, but there will be another time when I can explain to you like why.
Kathy's working on a talk show over for Oprah in some regard. Michelle.
I think I would also be a billionaire.
Right, of all the
if
things
we collected all those comments. And I'm more visible online nowadays more than ever, especially since the rising anti-Asian violence. I've been more vocal, not only because I wanted to see change happen, but I just wanted people who were going through similar struggles to know that they're not alone. So just sharing my stories and sharing the way that I am coping with some of the traumas that are happening all around me and in my life. I think for me, just sharing our stories, like the ones that you're sharing, that deeply resonate with people, can be a form of healing together. And sometimes when we are vulnerable, when we share some of our thoughts and beliefs, the opposition will happen. And especially when we are pushing against the societal norms of white supremacy or anti-Asian racism, I think there's going to be people who vehemently disagree because their core belief is that you shouldn't exist. Their core belief is that you shouldn't be here. So that's one category of hateful comments and pushbacks that I get. It's from people who are rooted in their belief that I should not exist the way that I do, and who don't see my humanity. And I've learned to kind of not engage with those types of comments and actions. The types of comments and messages that I get that are really hurtful, for me personally, is ones that come from my own people. It's the ones that I get from fellow Asian people. You know, oftentimes it's Asian cis hetero men, I'm not gonna lie, who are seeking to challenge my thoughts and beliefs. And I think in many ways see me as an easy target. And I think that the time that I got the most hateful comments, and you know, I was getting handwritten threatening mails to my PO box. I was getting messages. I was getting emails through my website. I was getting death threats. I was getting rape threats. These things happened most intensely at a time when I was trying to rally our community against anti-Black racism. And I think this is a really challenging topic for our community. When I started organizing our community, the Asian Americans in particular, around challenging anti-Blackness within our community, at the same time when anti-Asian hate crimes were arising, the messages that I was getting from people ranged from, how could you be rallying for another community when your own people are suffering? To, Black people are the ones that are killing our people. How dare you organize for Black people when they're the ones who are hurting our elders? Which, by the way, is categorically false based on the statistics and the studies that have found that the most hate crimes against Asian people are committed by white people, not Black people. It's really, really important for us to name that. That's during that time, I got the most number of hate messages from white people who didn't like the activism work that I was doing, who didn't want me to exist, but also from Asian people who I believe were doing that out of fear because of the trauma that we were living through. Because their stories, because our pain are so often erased and invisibilized. And I can, really understand and tap into that fear because I live with it too. Because I'm afraid every day that my mom's going to be attacked when she's riding the bus in San Francisco. But what also hurt my heart is how we lack the understanding that all of our struggles are connected. That when I'm fighting against anti-Blackness, I am actually challenging the same root of violence that my community is experiencing, right? Because anti-Asian racism, anti-Black racism, the roots of our struggles connect at white supremacy. So when I'm showing up for another community, I am not putting our community's struggles on pause. I'm actually showing up for our people too. So that lack of understanding was what I found to be the critical bridging work that I needed to do as, somebody who has a platform. So I think, it's important for me to understand the range of different attacks that I get, right? Sometimes it's rooted in just pure ignorance and refusal to see my humanity as an Asian person, as an Asian woman. But sometimes it's coming from deep pain and deep fear that they are not being seen. And so in being able to discern how these comments are originating, I think I've been able to change my responses to them so that I can choose for my own well-being how I want to engage and for the betterment of my own work, how I, deal with some of these things. But yes, the pushback is real. They're not fun to deal with. And the online space is also very ripe for these types of very toxic forms of violence that then gets perpetuated in real life too, right? It's not just online violence that's disconnected from what happens in real life. There's a reason why Asian women are targeted on the daily by all forces of violence. So yeah, I think it's a very real problem that I don't have a solid answer to. Although I will say, I do think that tech platforms and social media companies have more of a responsibility to moderate some of these things that are happening, which is why I've joined a coalition of people who are fighting against that called Build Tech We Trust.
I think all of us here in the room feel extremely grateful for both of you and your work and putting yourself out there. As many of us, we carry that fear that you're talking about every day. With that being said, when we talk about success, and I love that. Oh,
Whoopsie.
there goes. Well, there's insurance on it. It's going to be okay. It's just a cell phone. It's okay. We can define success in so many different ways. What's important is that we don't define it by the quantity of what we do, right? How much time are you putting into your profession, or how many times you're going to get something done, or how many projects you have on board. But also there's something about quality and quality of your own life. And so for as much as you both do and how busy you are, would love for you to share, what your Asian joy looks like, how you show up for yourself and take care of yourself.
For me, it's pretty simple because I feel like I don't have a ton of time. It's being able to work out, even if it's for 10 minutes. It could be seen as just like therapy for myself. I work in a very crowded space. I'm constantly around people. And when I'm at home, I don't really get reprieve because I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so when I get home, it's also very crazy. I barely can get time to myself. So I think time to myself is really important. Even if it's 10 minutes, it's quiet. Like when I think about the stresses in life, I call it noise in my head, and I can't think if there's too much going on. And so even that 10 minutes goes a long way if it's every single day. And if I can make time, then it's travel, because travel for a chef, number one, is inspiration. It also allows me to learn more about different cultures, different people. It's something that I want to do with my family and share with my kids so that they can become global citizens. But it's also just something that is highly enjoyable, right? You're around new people, new experiences, and amazing food. So those are sort of the two most important things for me. It's carve out the minimal time that you can have to yourself. And trust me, even going into the restroom and taking a shower is not quiet, because my kids will be like pounding on the door. They'll be like, let me in. So yeah, it's the gym. They can't go there. And then it's travel. So
One day they will be in the gym with you, though. Michelle.
Amazing. I just always find parents to be incredible. Parents and caregivers with youngsters. I just have so much respect for the way that you manage everything.
Thank you.
For me, I am still learning, I think, about how I find joy in my life and for myself. I think because so much of my life was about the grind, about the hustle, about being ambitious and achieving, because I thought that's how I was going to be able to provide for my family, but also to be worthy of rest, worthy of respect, worthy of love and care. So in realizing that actually none of those things makes me worthy, it's just my existence, me existing because I was born into this world. That's what makes me worthy of all these things. Has been a challenging one, because now I have to let go of my addiction to achieving and accomplishments being the source of me being defined as a successful person. So letting that go has been a really challenging journey, because now I don't know what's supposed to make me happy. If I'm not chasing after the next accomplishment, then how am I going to, who am I? Who am I without my work? Who am I without my job? Who am I without the accolades? Who am I without the followers? Who am I without the likes, right? And I think being able to sit with myself in that quiet, in that uncertainty, has been probably one of the most challenging works I've ever done in my life, because it's so fundamentally, existentially challenging in a society that is defined by productivity, that is defined by capitalism. That's, the mandate in order for us to feel worthy of anything in this life. So for me, I think joy is going too far. A sense of centeredness, groundedness has come from my mental health journey going to therapy. I've been in therapy for 5.5 years. It's also Mental Health Awareness Month, everybody. Yay! So I really, truly believe that it's so important for our community, especially to destigmatize mental health. I know my mom's dialed in, so I don't want to like talk badly about her, but you need to go to therapy too. I think in our culture, people think that mental health is something that you have to just get over like a cold. Like you have to fight through it. Like I am strong enough that I don't need to go to therapy, because I grew up watching TV where if people have to go to therapy, if they have to go to like a mental institution, you were pathologized. You were quote unquote crazy. And so, I think for me, finding joy starts with me figuring out what has been suffocating me all my life. And I think I'm starting to really unlearn how to breathe again, how to just exist, and how to tap into what actually fills me up. That's not about external validation. That's not about the accomplishing of all these things or climbing the ladder. And I think the second piece of that has been community, and really realizing that I can't do this alone. And I've been so lucky to have incredible friends who are just by my side no matter what, who remind me that I'm worthy, who remind me that I don't need to work to be worthy. I don't need to accomplish to be worthy of their friendship, of their love and care and respect. That's been truly so grounding for me. And as Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, often says, collective trauma must be healed collectively. And I truly, truly, truly believe that we cannot get through this life alone, that we have to heal in community with each other. And that's also where I find the most joy and healing.
Kind of feel like we should end the program now and hug each other. Celebrate.
Go up to the third floor.
Well, you will, audience, have the chance to ask your questions. We have a microphone that's going to be passed around, so start thinking about those questions as I start to wrap mine. I have so many questions, by the way, and I'm trying to figure out which ones I really should ask. I do want to go back to something about the trade-offs of equity and justice. And it's a chapter that, Michelle, you wrote in your book, because I don't want to glaze over this very important thing that you had mentioned earlier. This is a tough conversation that we need to have in our community. It continues to be challenging, but share your knowledge with us. And because you have these lived experiences, that we can talk about these hard conversations, but also find some possible solutions together.
Yeah. Are you asking specifically about the way that we challenge anti-Blackness in our community, or trade-offs in general?
I think trade-offs in general. I think many of us actually, you hit it, it just, for me at least, and I'm going to put this out there was once upon a time, especially during 2017 to 2020 or whenever it was, that we switched presidents, and I became so vocal that I got afraid, and then really honestly kind of curled up in a ball and said, I'm just not going to challenge the system in this way anymore, because it's become too dangerous, or my parents don't want me to, or I really felt what would happen because I married somebody who's from a different country, and I'm also queer, and so I really put myself out there too much, right? And there was a chapter in your book where you talked about, like, it was more like a calling in, and that you demonstrated that there I like the word that you used in terms of trade-offs. So when we stand up for what we believe in, that we don't always have to feel like, I guess the right way to put it is that we can stand up against white supremacy. We can stand up for, these things that we believe in without feeling we're doing right or wrong.
Yeah. Thank you for lifting that up. The chapter that that Michelle is referencing is about knowing what we're willing to give up to be the people that we want to be. And I asked the question about how our work would change, how our approach would change when it comes to equity and justice work. If instead of asking questions like, what would make equity come true? What would make a more just society come true? To what am I willing to give up in order to stay in alignment with the values that I say are important to me? And I say this because so often the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the corporate space or social justice work at large is seen as this very fluffy promise of the rainbows and sunshines where everybody gets along. And now we have the magical, group of people who look different, who are working in harmony, who are achieving great things together. And we often fail to realize that vision because we haven't even acknowledged what it's going to take us to get there. And so often people give up on this work because they are met with these challenges that ask them to trade off something that may feel really important to them. In the work setting, it's often money, time, and our social standing, right? When companies say that they care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and yet they are not willing to put real money down or slow down their hiring process so that they can actually build up a pipeline filled with underrepresented people, or they're willing to slow the product launch so that they can make it more accessible. These are some very concrete examples of trade-offs that companies are not willing to make while making this false promise that will end up making people feel very disappointed and cynical about the work at large. Individually, I think we have to also reckon with what are we willing to do in order to stay in alignment with our values and be the people that we say we want to be. And it's never something that I want to force upon people because that's not my job. People often think because I've been an equity consultant that my job is to try to change people's mind. That is not my job. I don't want that job. What I'm doing is putting up a mirror so that when people say that they care about certain issues, I can show them when they are misaligned, when they fall off the path, so that they can actually hold true to their promise, to the values that they say that's important to them. And part of that work is about being honest, being very brutally honest about the trade-offs that we are willing or unwilling to make. And, I think it's important for me to differentiate between people's desire to hold on to their comfort versus safety. What you're talking about, Michelle, when your actual well-being is being threatened because you are pushing against white supremacy, because you are trying to raise awareness about the harm that's being caused onto marginalized people, you are actually reckoning with your own safety. When someone who is not in a marginalized group fails to push back against the violence that's happening in the workplace or in our society at large because it's uncomfortable, that's a very different type of trade-off that they're not being willing to make versus the safety that's being threatened by the violence that are being inflicted upon marginalized people. So it's very different type of trade-offs that we're asking people to make, and there's inequity there too, right? So when I'm talking about the trade-offs, there are so many different layers. There's individual trade-offs that we make as people, whether it's, money, right? Are we going to use this money for ourselves, or are we going to give back? Are we going to redistribute our wealth, or are we going to hoard it? It could be also at the organizational level. What are the types of policy changes that we need to make in order to make sure that we are upholding the values that we say are important to us? And it could be also at the systemic level. There's so many trade-offs that are not being made at the systemic level that are creating this artificial sense of scarcity among marginalized communities, while the 1%, while the billionaires, while the tech companies continue to profit off of the exploitation, right? So what does it look like for our society to become a little bit less oppressive? What does it take for our company to become a little bit less exploitative? What are the trade-offs that we're willing to make sure that we are in alignment with our values? So that's the gist of that chapter, and really giving people practical, concrete examples of what these trade-offs look like, and urging people to not give up everything all at once, but urging people to be honest at the very least, so that we can move forward with more clarity. Yeah.
We'll seize the opportunity to be more honest going forward. Let's open it up to the audience for your questions. We have a mic over here in the corner. Questions for our speakers tonight?
There are 2 questions.
Hi, thank you very much. I too am a good troublemaker. And I love it that you each have kind of, quote unquote, gone outside your lane, so to speak. And I love that about it. But it's a frightening place to be, not only for the people who are doing it, but for those who are supporting it. So what advice would you have for people who are supporting others who are, quote unquote, not staying in their lane?
I'll let you take it first.
Oh, you want me to take it first? I actually have a terminology for this, and I call it the second courageous. So when there is someone who is courageous enough to take the first step in challenging something or veer off the path, we're all taking cues on how that person is going to be perceived by the rest of the community. In that moment, our job as witnesses is to jump into the fire with them, or to validate their decisions and choices or their courageous action, so that they are not alone in the fire. And when enough of us become second courageous, then we get to create the ripple effect of change. That's what happened with the Me Too movement. That is what happened with all the grassroots organizing that's happening against policing. And that's all of our job. I think it's really frightening to sometimes be the first courageous, especially when no one else is validating our action. And I, write about this very common example of being in a meeting room and being the first person to say, oh, what so-and-so just said didn't land right with me. We should maybe change the language that we're using. And everybody kind of feeling really awkward and tense, and then just laughing it off and then moving on without anyone saying anything else. So in that moment, how different would it look like if somebody else joined in to say, oh, that was a really great suggestion. And then somebody else says, yes, we should definitely discuss that. Or somebody asking a question, hey, that was a really courageous thing. Can you explain to me why that was not the right terminology? So that's just a very micro example of the impact of a second courageous, not just letting the one courageous, the one bravest person be standing in the fire alone. And then I think in a different context, someone watching someone else veer off the traditional path. So for example, for me, I quit my last tech job without anything being lined up. And I did that because I was quitting in solidarity with my friend who was assaulted at work. And the incident was not handled well. It was covered up and it was a mess. And I just did not feel like it was in alignment with my values to stay at the company. So I just quit. And I decided not to go back into tech after that. My family was terrified when I made that decision. My dad, especially, because of his background, right? Because of him having had to struggle so much in this country as an undocumented person, as a low-income person, as somebody who had to declare bankruptcy. Me throwing away a cushy tech job for my values was really difficult for him to witness. My mom, she was dependent, and she was dependent on my financial support to be here in this country. Terrifying for her too. So when we push against these systems that are wanting us to stay small and fall in line, when we push against that, there's going to be pushback, and it's not going to be cost-free. And it's not going to be cost-free for even those who are just watching. And in those moments, what really helped me get through that time was my mom and dad saying, it's okay. You'll figure it out. and me believing that I can find my way because I had the support of my family and friends. That was so grounding for me. And even if they can't figure all of it out for me, just the acknowledgement that I am doing something that is courageous, I am doing something that is different, and no matter what, they will be there for me, I think was the best gift that they could have given me.
Wow. I think for me, I would say that, if you're viewing from the sidelines and you're seeing someone who's putting themselves out there, the best way to support that or even try to dip your feet into it is actually to reach out to them. I think people are a lot easier to reach out to through social and all that. And just as much as people want to provide confidence and support, there's equally the same amount of people who may give them things that are very negative. So to feel like, hey, I'm going to add in, backup. I'm going to be supporting this person who's doing something that I can't imagine myself doing. You're basically helping them accomplish more and more. You're saying, I can't be at the forefront, but I'll be your army.
Yeah.
And I will be there to fight you through and push you through because I know you're going to experience resistance. You don't have to be the person out front. You can be the person in back, and that's just as honorable and just as respectful. And you're moving the needle because it takes more than one, right? One is not as powerful as 100, as 1,000, as 1,000,000,000. And there's 1,000,000,000 of us. So
Yes.
I love that.
we can make things happen.
Yes. I just want to add, because what you said is so true. And my experience in navigating my path has been consistently that I am not going to be taken care of by these systems that are at play, because they're not designed for me, right? For example, my book launch. Michelle Meow made it happen for me at the Commonwealth Club, using her resources and her privileges of being able to have this platform, right? Like, it's always been my community who showed up for me consistently. And that's you all. You all being here, right? You all being able to provide that support for the people that you know who are in your spheres of influence. That is so sacred. The community support that we give one another when we can't rely on the big systems to take care of us because they're not designed for people like you and me. And we can count on one another to then fill that gap. That, to me, is the most powerful weapon that we have to be able to continue this fight in a sustainable way. And I just need to personally always want to thank, and I'm so grateful for people like Michelle doing this work and amplifying voices that otherwise would not be amplified. So yay, Michelle!
Here I am again, just wanting to curl up in a ball. And I'm going to get better at it. I will.
Receive.
Especially after tonight's conversation and seizing our moment, right? We all have our moment. I'm going to ignore that clock and maybe we can take one more question before we all head up and celebrate ourselves.
Well, thank you so much for wonderful, absolutely wonderful presentation and all your opinions and how you feel. It's amazing, and what you achieved is amazing. And in this line, I would like to ask what you're looking ahead forward, what you're working on now, and what can we expect from you anytime soon?
So I'm not giving up on my dream of doing this travelogue on sharing the best Asian eats across the U.S. through an Asian person's perspective. That's going to happen. But I'm also going to be working on a cookbook with my dad that's going to explore, both of our experiences of how he became the chef that he is, what inspired him to become, someone so passionate about food, from his immigration story of being in China to here to opening House of Nanking, in combination with my experience of growing up in Chinatown, San Francisco as an Asian American and becoming the chef that I am. And I'm hoping all of that will then help me be able to produce and create more opportunities and stories that are like mine, that explore Asian culture and just like immigrant stories. And the last one is to be the Asian Martha Stewart.
Yeah. That's amazing. Can I be an honorary food reviewer?
Of course.
Follow you around.
You're already on it.
First and foremost, I'm working on healing myself and really tapping into what sparks my joy, because I think I negated that for so long, and I'm still in the midst of figuring out who I am. And then the second thing is my paperback just came out. So the book came out in paperback with a discussion guide, which means a lot to me because as a career facilitator, I truly think that so much change can happen when we are in conversation with one another, when we are in community, challenging each other's ideas, when we're having compassionate yet critical dialogues with one another. So it's a little facilitator's gift in the book. So I hope you all can check that out. And then the last thing that I'm really excited about that I'm putting out into the universe is I would love to have my own podcast. Yes, I wanna keep uplifting amazing stories. So if anyone has expertise in that area or want to sponsor me, let me know.
I can help.
Yeah.
We're making things happen right
Yes,
here.
that's right.
Now. Yeah. Well, one last question for both of you, and just one advice, one takeaway you'd like for all of us when we walk out that door to remember when we seize our moment.
Okay, I feel like mine is probably more specific to maybe my upbringing and like how I'm traditionally quite Asian. I have kind of a specific story to this. So when my show came out, I received this text from a very prolific and famous agent from Los Angeles, and he congratulated me and said, "Oh my God, you did an amazing job on there. Let me know if you ever need any help or advice." And I hopped on a Zoom with him, and he's like, "Tell me what you're working on. What's the next thing?" And halfway through this thing, he stops me and he's like, "Okay, stop. Just stop talking." And he's like, "Listen to me. You've established yourself. You've accomplished everything that you need to at this point. I don't want to hear, well, I think, I hope, I'm grateful, I feel lucky, and we'll see." And I don't know what about that conversation that kind of just knocked me on the head is that I think that when you're out there trying to accomplish these dreams and aspirations, there's always a lot of self-doubt, and maybe it's because of my upbringing to keep yourself always grounded and to be humble. And he was like, those are two different things. You can save that for your friends, for your fans, for your customers. But when someone's asking you who can actually help you, tell them. Tell them what it is that you want. Look them in the eye. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to push for what you believe in. And you'll be surprised that even if you've accomplished a lot, you can still have these sort of second guessing and well, I don't know, maybe. And that made a really huge impact for me. Just like she said, success is an evolving thing. I guess the biggest lesson that I've ever learned is that at this point is to keep pushing for what you believe in and really believe in it. Yeah.
Speaking right to me right now.
I know, same. I'm like, yes, I gotta go crawl up in a corner with a blanket.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I've done this before. Why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
So he's like, if you talk with determination, you believe in your dream, people will listen to you and they'll follow your dream and they're going to make it happen. So believe in yourself.
Amazing. I always think about my teenage self when I think about the kind of advice that I want to give to others. Because I always say we teach what we need to learn. And the advice that I wish that someone really told me and that I had internalized at the age of 13 when I moved to this country, and I was afraid all the time of not surviving this world, is that you don't have to prove anything to anybody. I think I lived so much of my life trying to prove that I'm worthy of all the things. And I think that pressure of having to constantly be worthy in the eyes of our society or others can really weigh down a lot of people and lead to a lot of things like the imposter syndrome, insecurities, and self-doubt. So the message that I'm constantly trying to remind myself of these days is that I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to prove anything to myself either, because I have lived this life. I have made it this far. Not the successes or the accomplishments, but just the fact that I'm still here, despite all the struggles. So the message that I want to give to everybody is that we're all worthy, simply because we exist, simply because we are breathing, not because of what you do, not because of what you can do for other people, but because of your existence, we are all better off. And part of my work is proving that that message and protecting that message, because so much of our society and our systems that we live within are trying to challenge that belief fundamentally, because the systems that we're living in dictate who's worthy of care, who's worthy of respect, who's worthy of rest. And so if we really tune into the belief that we're all worthy simply because we exist, I believe that that will give us the answers to solving some of the inequities and the violence that we see in the world. Thank you so much.
That concludes our program, a mic drop moment from both Kathy and Michelle Mi-Jung. Let's give another round of applause for Michelle Mi-Jung Kim and Kathy Fang. I want to thank all of you who joined us online. Get your copy of Michelle Mi-Jung Kim's book, The Wake Up, and also Kathy Fang's book, Easy Asian Cooking, if you don't have your own copy. Thank you to all of you who are joining us here. We're here together celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, and so we're going to head upstairs to the 3rd floor. Remember, take the elevator up. And also get a copy of your book. It's here, available for you if you don't have it, and we'll be doing book signings on the 3rd floor as well. And my last thanks to Ascend NorCal for putting this event together, and thanks to the Commonwealth Club of California. Michelle Meow, we'll see you next time right here at the Commonwealth Club.